Okay. Hi, I'm Neely. I work at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, uh, both in the technical and the compliance sides. Starting about 2009, I got into this habit of picking up a few certifications. It's kind of addictive, so be careful. If you may have noticed, one is not like the others. I'm also a certified credit union director, so the last one is certified credit union volunteer. The origin of this talk, one of the conferences I presented is the ISACA Los Angeles yearly convention, and the organizer, Debbie, and I were talking about what can we do, and she said, do you think you could do web for dummies? I'm like, I don't know. So this is sort of the genesis of this. It's evolved a little bit since we started. It was actually an interesting path to get here, but I kind of figured out some areas we want to talk about. First being keeping your information safe, another about, say, keeping a browser safe, some about keeping a user safe, and some about keeping services safe if you're in the service offering business. This is focused really on end users, and another category of group that I found is willing to take a lot of risks on what they're doing, security professionals. I resemble that remark. So when we started, identity theft was a big thing. But lately, we're spending a lot of time talking about ransomware. But the basics still remain the same. Users make it easy. So we need to have them not make it so easy. They reuse and unchanged credentials. We had 360 MySpace credentials released, 117 million LinkedIn credentials, and just this week, 500 million Yahoo username password combinations. Do you suppose some of them still work in other contexts? The other thing that people forget to think about is open source intelligence. Information people use for security questions or related to the passwords they pick often can be found through social media, corporate websites, personal websites or blog, and of course, the other big thing is bad choices. My favorite fix for this remains start turning on multi-factor authentication. All right. A lot of things support it. There's been a little bit of hubbub about whether we should use SMS as a second factor, but compared to that username and password by itself, it's a raising the bar. Now, for those of us who have been in a while, we're used to things like these guys. This is actually a little better because we're not issuing physical tokens to people. A little more scalable, not as secure. Or, of course, if you're in the gov space, you're used to using these things. Anyway, moving on. Some of the basics we want the users to get is that the password is like a toothbrush. Change it, don't share it. Pick a good one. And in fact, we really should be looking at passphrases. I know this is really basic to you guys, but I know a lot of users that don't get it yet. And the XKCD, correct battery horse staple phrase, it plays. But then the next thing I have trouble getting people to remember is to use some special characters. And the way that I favorite special characters, although many sites don't support it, the most evil on the list is the space. Now, how many run in John and it's cracking passwords and you're going to miss that there's a space at the end of the password? This is kind of an important security mean. But like I said, it doesn't work for everybody, but I recommend playing with it. The others are old friends. You all have seen them before. And one more thing for our users, get them to use different passwords on the different websites so that release of a bazillion username password combinations don't work as well. And then, of course, you'll get some pushback that they're saying, well, how do I keep track of all that? Well, you need a password manager. Two of them that are out there, and this is not an advertisement for either one, but they're free. One is KeePass, and that stores passwords locally, or LastPass, they store them online in the cloud. We could argue that LastPass has problems that they fixed. Point is, I want you guys to use a password manager. And while I'm at it, I still don't know of a vulnerability that will read the yellow sticky on the side of your monitor with your password on it. Now, there's humans that do that, but malware, not yet. That still creeps me out, though. past have picked up who hasn't picked up a keyboard with the sticky on it with the password on the bottom? Or when we had the locking 3270 terminals and they kept the key in the unlocked top drawer? Or am I just I'm the old one in the room, aren't I? So the next thing we started running into is users that want to run as administrator. Well, in fact, a lot of home computers, you get that Dell out of the box. It says, give me your name, create a password, and you're admin, and off you go. And many home users don't even think about this. But I also run into corporate users that says, the only way I can do my freaking job is if I'm running as admin all the time. That's an interesting battle to have. But in the event that if you must have users running as admin, the first best thing you can do is set UAC to always. I started looking at UAC bypasses, and every one of them depended on that not being set to always. So sure, somebody may find a way to bypass the always, but the first best step we can do is set it to always. And yeah, that makes it annoying. The next thing we should do is change the authentication behavior, because how many of you clicked a yes/no button by accident and clicked the wrong value? I have too, more than I want to admit. So we want to change the authentication to prompt for credentials. Stay. So at least you then get a username password problem. That slows you down, even in the heat of adrenaline. And yes, you will become the subject of dartboards, but you've compromised and tried to keep the bar high. The next area I want to move into is what we're doing with our browsers. So, because we still have our old friends of malware, and now we've got our ransomware coming in to bother us as well. And one of the biggest areas of concern I have is plugins. The Acrobats, the Silverlights, the QuickTimes. You have this library of plugins in your browser, some of which you don't even know are there. All of which have a mortgage, all have security and trade-offs. I recommend taking a look every now and then. Do you need them? What happens if you turn that unknown plugin off? Does the world stop? You get fired? Odds are no, but something might get inconvenient. But the one I love to pick on the most, and we all should be picking on the most, is Flash. I mean, we've got to disable Flash, but not that Flash, and not that Flash, but that one. I think we've patched the Adobe Flash Player at least monthly for 2 years, 3 years now? That dance is getting old. And really with HTML5, it's becoming to the point where we can turn Flash off. If nothing else, set it up as an ask only, or put in a plugin a plugin that keeps it off unless you really, really want it on. I even ran into a banking site that wanted to run Flash. The site worked fine with the no setting, but I was like, WTF? So another one, I think we can live without Java in the browser anymore. Now, there used to be all kinds of cool things, mostly menus, that people did in Java. I think that is gone the way of the dinosaur. So take Java out of it. And now here comes the hard one. How about turning that bad boy off? Caveat, it breaks things, good and evil. I mean, we know that a lot of attacks will leverage JavaScript. So this is a hard one to sell. And we know there are things like NoScript that can turn it on and off. Oh, and you can also disable, I meant to mention on Flash, while it's built into the Edge browser, you can disable it. There is a setting for it. So another avenue, a little more fruitful, is let's talk about ads. We know that there are a number of ad sources that have been compromised, and there's malware coming through those ad sites. So it's time for an ad blocker. And there are some good ones. And they do need to be tuned. You can set it and forget it, but you really need to tune it. They will break some commerce sites and other validation services. But even if you have a user turning it off for a single page but turning it back on, we're still we're way ahead of where we were. So I've been using these personally, and it's actually kind of interesting what breaks. Like I said, the most common is when I'm getting ready to do the checkout on an online purchase. Also, let's get rid of HTTP and go to HTTPS only. You've all heard of it. Let's encrypt. The cost of certificates has come way down. Everybody's supporting them now. The argument of it taking too much overhead, I think, is, well, that ship has sailed. They're cool. They're fine. And when we have multiple browsers, we got to remember to patch them all. People tend to forget that beyond the Microsoft update, they have to update Firefox and Chrome, Safari, Edge, Tor, whatever. I've run into users that collect browser types like badges. It didn't work your stuff doesn't work because it doesn't work in Opera, so it's crap. No. But whatever. I'm saying just keep them all updated. If you have to have, the ring of power of browsers, cool. Just keep them maintained. So then in this journey, I started thinking about, well, what about our mobile users? The guys who can't live if they're not online in Starbucks while they're ordering their coffee, right? You know, or is that just me? Oh, it's just me. But what I recommend is having a VPN that's on all the time. You're routing over a secure path. It's man-in-the-middle resistant or tamper indicating. It'll fail if somebody's messing with it. And it provides a consistent point to the internet. This really isn't as much about privacy in this context, although I like them for corporate because it is about privacy. This is about, avoiding the Wi-Fi pineapple on the table in Starbucks. And unknown access point. But when you're doing it, make sure it's full tunnel. I know we've set up non-full tunnels so that only the corporate access goes through, but really, we need to look at the concept of the dynamic perimeter, where all our traffic is routed through the VPN. And think about it. If your corporate services, and corporate laptops have a VPN that self-logs in whenever it's online, your perimeter is now extended with that mobile device wherever it's sitting. So all those other things you put so hard to monitor and watch are in line. Now, if you're just a home user, I think half the access points come with an open VPN client. How about playing with it? And there are other ones that are out there that are available for free, like ProXPN, Private Internet Access, and a few others. There is one risk. Your VPN may fail open. So we have to teach people to watch for it. But it's still, we're raising the bar, right? We're not trying to jump from zero to nirvana. We're trying to get the bar up, help the user out. Now, with all the stuff that's been going on, a lot of research, some of the ransomwares, will act if you start coming after us. People are starting to explore the onion router. You guys are all familiar with it, I'm sure. And it has all kinds of promise about protection and eavesdropping and blocking advertisers. The one weakness is some of the exit points have been convinced by some folks to reveal the client's identity. This is not cool, but it is reality. And remember, it's free. So if you're in the position where you need to do research anonymously, buy an anonymizer service. Get a contract in place. But if you just want to do casual research and occasionally, and you don't mind if you get exposed, Tor is actually pretty cool. But you have to know what the impact is. If you take the B of A site, I know this is hard to see, you don't get a hell of a lot with the Tor browser. And a lot of messages about these things don't work. And you can fix that. Tor contains the keys to its own destruction. You have to resist the temptation to turn on services that will reveal your identity. But you can turn on browser plugins. You can turn on JavaScript. You can go have at it. But you really want to try and keep it at the highest possible setting, but still have it usable. So, just something I started running. It's a really interesting phenomenon with Tor, but really annoying that folks like CMU were revealing who the users were. Now, how about switching to browser strategies? Using a different browser for secure transactions like banking and regular surfing or porn. The internet was built for porn, right, guys? And in order to help you reinforce it, you want to whitelist and blacklist. And there are plugins for this. Yes, I said the P word again. But the idea is, in the browser that's for banking, the only thing you whitelist is your banking sites. And then the browser that's for general, you blacklist them. So to help you from making a mistake. But even so, you only want to use one secure service at a time, because you don't want any cross-contamination of any weakness from one to the other, because they're not equally secure, right? And exit B of A before going to Wells Fargo or whatever. Fill in the blanks.
As much fun as you're having shopping on Amazon, getting stuff, finish that up before you go onto your banking site. But make sure you've saved the credit cards online so that I can get them, okay? So, and actually a better strategy, that we were chewing the fat at a ISC Squared chapter meeting, and a friend of mine said, even better is to have separate machines, whether it's a virtual machine or even better still, a separate laptop, that it's the only place in the world you do your banking from. And the reason we're talking about this in a ransomware target environment. So you're going to haul this thing out, only use it for that purpose, and put it away. Make a new backup, do updates at that time. But otherwise, it's offline. So it's a much harder target because it's not reachable. But you gotta not change the scope. Don't get out there and go click on something cool while you're doing it, or the gig could be up, because that something cool could undo this whole process. Which reminds me that my buddy Dan gave me this phrase, and I love it. And it's the chair-to-keyboard interface. It's the most difficult piece in the IT chain. I like chair-to-keyboard interface way better than PEBCAP, but which we all know PEBCAP. Some users click anything. I have a friend who his husband would regularly call me and say, I need you to come unmess up Barry's computer. That gets old. He didn't believe he had time to learn how to be safe online. The problem solved itself because they moved. That's not the optimal solution and not generally available as an option. The other thing I found is that there's two ways that our best laid security plans can get undone. One is you get an errant user who clicks the wrong pop-up at the wrong time, the way you never thought of, and then they get hacked. The other is you got the really smart user who spends hours head down trying to get around the protections because they want to get something done rather than calling the help desk to get an exception. The end result is equally bad. But we have to keep an eye out for these guys because they're very persistent or very errant. On the line of clicking smart, we need users to be aware of links that aren't what they claim to be. We've all hovered over links, and I know that we can use JavaScript, to change what happens when they're hovered over. But for the most part, they're not. That's not happening. To run this site, you need to install the following software. We click, right? Just install it. That's okay. Not so much. Of course, beware of insecure plugins. I'm sorry to keep beating the plugin flag. I must have been on a plugin tear when I was writing this deck. And carefully examine certificate prompts, particularly on mobile. The killer on mobile is it's really hard in the mobile interface to see enough information to really make a good decision about a certificate. So my advice generally is if you get a prompt like that, whether it's on your desktop or on your mobile, don't click OK unless you really, really know. Which also comes back to now, it also moves into the server space for those of us providing services because we need to provide good certificates for users that they won't get that prompt. And that comes with a cost and it comes with some inconvenience. But the first thing I want to touch on, again, when you have services that you're providing to others, use HTTPS. Buy those certificates. Disable insecure algorithms, the ones that are, your null ciphers, your SSL3, your TLS 1.0. Get rid of them. And by the way, it may take some testing to get rid of TLS 1.0 and have it actually stay off. But you got to start. It's a journey. Start at the beginning. Turn off insecure methods. HTTP trace is on more than it should be. It was just intended as a testing mechanism. It wasn't intended for use in production servers. However, that little gem got kind of lost along the way. Excuse me. Use verifiable certificates. Like I said, I don't think that we want users clicking on the OK button here. We won't want those coming up. If we're doing something from a corporate perspective, like we're putting up a man-in-the-middle proxy or something that has its own CA, we need to have a way to seamlessly push that to the user so they're not seeing this prompt. Yes, they'll click and they'll install a certificate. Don't let them do that. Another thing, something the bane of all our existence, and this is more not in the security side, but more on the IT side, they never have time to patch, or they never have time to patch fast enough. We have a culture change. We have to keep things updated. The OS, the web server, all the layers. A fight I've fought for years is getting people to look beyond the OS, to go up and patch the web server and the application tier. Most importantly, these three favorites. I mean, how many of you guys have seen too many updates for these? Some of them have now got automated plugins where you can have it automatically patch it for you after a certain interval, which I do on my WordPress site because I never have enough time to patch it. It takes care of it for me, and it tells me, dude, I stopped waiting for you. I fixed it for you. It saves me a lot of grief. Oh, and you can buy services that keep things updated. Do you have to host your external content management, your external WordPress or Drupal site yourself? Or can you hire somebody that's really good at patching it and run it there? Particularly if it's external. And once again, on your services, disable what you don't need. Change the default accounts. We still get pen tests that find the default passwords and usernames. We're all guilty. Or maybe that's just me. Anyway, I think it's all of us. We all get in a hurry. Do get pen tests. If you find things, fix them. And use what tools are out there. They're free ones. They're good ones. So here we are. I'm almost done. We talked about user habits, password habits, server services habits, all these things that can be cleared up, all of which raise the bar on the weaknesses of our system. With that, questions? Stunned silence? Tomatoes? Well, thank you very much for tolerating me very much.